Coich Anam, the soul shrine. I swim upstream every night, all the way up into Conla's well. At that depth of myself, maybe the shadows of the otherworld hazel are always upon me, are always upon all of us, dropping their wisdom and wonder down into us. A cabin on the mountainside, hid in a grassy nook, where door and window open wide, so friendly stars may look. The rabbit shy can patter in, the winds may enter free, that throng around the mountain throne in living ecstasy. And when the sun sets dimmed in eve, and purple fills the air, I think the sacred hazel tree is dropping berries there. The starry fruitage waved aloft where Conla's well o'erflows. For sure the enchanted waters flow through every wind that blows. And when the night towers up aloft to shake the trembling dew, I wonder how every high and lonely thought that thrills my being through is but a ruddy berry dropped down through the brightening air, and from the magic tree of life fruit falls everywhere. Saint Finian arrived in the plain of the sacred tree. He'd come with a purpose to bring the new gospel to Ireland, but standing on the plain of the sacred tree, maybe it meant that the otherworld hazel was dropping its fruit through the air, and maybe he imbibed, maybe he digested one of those hazel nuts, and at that point he was a wise one, a filii, a poet, a far farser, a wise one. For it was he that sought me out. He'd heard rumours of a hermit that still lived in a cave, practicing the old ways. And whenever he went around Moville and asked the local people, they would often divert him, say, oh, I'm not sure about that. But he could see in their eyes, he could see in their countenance, he could see in their persona that they knew him. They knew this old hermit that lived up in the mountain passes. And here I was, rooted in County Down, in Mount Donard, living in the foothills of those mountain passes flanked by the 4 hills of the last pagan queen. And at this time things were changing indeed, because of the formidable strength of people such as St. Finian of Moville, because of people such as Patrick Adshead, who was challenging the Druids, because of Columkill, who prophesied and spoke in the way of the filii, the poet. People started to forget. They forgot the old battles and the old wars. They forgot the great defeat of Shring in the first battle of Maturith. And Tautu, was she still in Torchon? Was she still there with that power, with her funeral games, still very much active? The Tuatha Danann, the great gods and goddesses of the light, the earth gods and goddesses, they were thought of as fairies, of dark sprites to scare people. And they were down in the hollow hills, thinking that no one knew or saw them anymore. But I was still there. I was still in my cave, practicing, still in praise of the Earth Mother. I was calling to the land where it was still immaculate, where the memories were still great, where I was bringing to all still that was known. For we can go back to that place, to our Coich Anam, and reimagine the past, so it becomes the eternal now. I make offerings. I pray. I fast for 3 days and for 3 nights. And I call to Eru Bambu Fola. I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bambu Fola. I invoke the land of Eru. Fruitful be her seas, perpetually green her forest. Feel her in my bones, I feel her in my blood. I feel her in my bones, I feel her in my blood. Eru Bambu Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bambu Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Fruitful be her seas, perpetually green her forest. I feel her in my bones, I feel her in my blood. Oh, I feel her in my bones, feel her in my blood. I invoke the land of Eru. Surging is the mighty sea. Mighty is the upland full of meadows. Full of meadows is the rainy wood. Rainy is the river full of waterfalls. Full of waterfalls is the spreading lake. Spreading is the spring of multitudes. A multitudes of peoples is the assembly. The assembly of the kings of Tiawa. Tiawa is a tower of tribes. The tribes of the sons of Mil. Warriors of ships, of vessels. Island is a mighty vessel. Flourishing is Ebedol. A very wise incantation of the very wise wives of Bresh. Outcry of the wives of Bunya. Island is a vast woman. Eramon smoked her. Here Iver entreated her. I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bambu Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bambu Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Fruitful be her seas, perpetually green her forest. Feel her in my bones, I feel her in my So when Saint Finian had heard these rumours, he was intrigued. He wanted to know who this hermit was. And although when he kept asking people, they would divert him, they would change the subject, he announced one day to all of his followers, well, I'm going up to the mountain passes to find this Filii, to find this person that's still practicing the old ways, to discover who he is and what he's about. And people said, oh, you mustn't go up there. You mustn't go up the mountain passes. It's dangerous. You could be anything. You could be ravaged by a boar. You could be eaten by a wolf. Anything could happen to you. And St. Finian looked at him. For you must remember, the early Irish saints were formidable indeed. Anyone that could live on Skellig in Ireland and build their homes and cook their food or fish is quite astonishing indeed. And he said, do you not think the Lord's grace will see me through and help me and guide me through? They could do nothing but just nod and agree with him, and a band of his followers decided to accompany him. These were the bravest ones, the ones that believed in the Lord above all else, and they went up the mountain passes. To start with, in the lowlands, there were quite a lot of woodlands there, and as they moved up into those woodlands, they saw a beautiful stag, probably a stag of 9 tines. It was stunning indeed. And as he looked at this beautiful red stag, he could have sworn it winked at him. They went on further, deeper into the wild wood, the vast untrammeled countryside which was still untouched by people. And there he saw in the distance a black, bristly boar, and he could have sworn it winked at him. Then they went higher up again, and they saw an eagle soaring over the hills, assessing the sight, probably looking for prey. And he could have sworn when it got nearer to them, it winked at them. And then as he went up to the mountain passes and he started to grow quite thirsty, it really was starting to get to him, he started to drink from a clear spring some water. And there in the water he saw a salmon, and he could have sworn it winked at him. But they carried on through, and he came to the mountain passes. He came to the hermitage where Tuan Macarroll the man he had heard so much about, lived. And so it is written, when St. Finian of Moville came to Ireland to preach the gospel into the territory of the men of Ulster, he went up to his stronghold, and a warrior greeted him and left them there, fasting over Sunday. The warrior's faith was not good. Said Finian to his followers, "There will come to you a good man, who will greet you, and who will tell you the stories of Ireland from the first time it was colonized until today." Then on the morrow, early in the morning, a venerable cleric came to them and bade them welcome. "Come with me into my hermitage," said he, "that is meeter for you." And they went with him into the hermitage, and they did the duties of the Lord's day, both with preaching and psalms and offerings. Then Finian asked him, Tell us your name." He replied, "Of the men of Ulster am I, Tuan, son of Carol, son of Murdoch Redneck am I. But I have taken this hermitage upon the hereditary land of my father. Tuan, son of Stan, son of Sarah, son of Parthloon's brother, was my name of yore at first." Finian gasped and looked at him. Tell me the events of Ireland, to wit, what had happened in it since the time of Parthloon, son of Sarah, some 2,000 years ago. And we will not eat with you until you tell us the stories of Ireland. For Finian believed him, believed every word he had said. He could see that his face flickered between animal and human. Sometimes it looked like a boar, sometimes a deer, sometimes a fox. It was all sorts of animals, and there was an age about him and a depth. When you looked into his eyes, it was like you were transported upstream into Conla's world. And he began, 5 times verily, Ireland was taken after the flood, and it was not taken after the flood until 312 years had gone. Then Parthloon, son of Sarah, took it. He went on a voyage with 24 couples. The cunning of each of them against each other was not great. They settled in Ireland until there were 5,000 of their race. Between 2 Sundays a mortality came upon them, and they all died save one man only. For it is not usual for someone to come out of a slaughter to tell the tale. That man am I. And I was on my own. I was on cliffs and in wastes, and I was on my own, and Ireland was empty for some 22 years. An old age came upon me, and I found special caves for myself, and I settled in them, and I hid from those wolves, and I still went out onto the cliffs, and I was in wastes, and I was hairy, and I was clawed, and I was wretched, and I was miserable, and I was terrible. But still I carried on, as I always had done, and I wondered if now it was my time to die. And I remembered the memories of before. I remembered the memories of when I first came to this land, some 2,000 years ago. For I was one of the early people that came here from the southwest onto the shores of Kerry. People remember Parthloon, but I remember above all else Downey. Oh, my Queen Downey, her bronze skin, her beautiful, wondrous eyes that would look upon you and you could see the green world awakening in her. She wore the jewels, the minerals of the earth upon her skin, and when she stepped upon the land, new locks and rivers burst forth. The land had accepted her and accepted our race of people. And so we went upon the land, and we saw Mount Brendan, what was then known as Mount Dyer, rising up from the sea in such beauticious awareness, reaching up to the sky. And when Downey came, the land started to warm further. The Snow-covered, lichen fields started to give way to other species such as shepherd's purse and mugwort. And the trees, aspen and juniper and willow, just a foot high yet fully formed, gave way to more forests. But this was the early time. This was before Inis Naviva, before the great forests of old. And we settled there. And one of the first things we did, for we knew it was important, hospitality is everything. When strangers come into your land, you must show them hospitality. It's a key tenet of tradition. And so we created the first guest house, the first ale which we brew from ferns, the first fields that we would browse with the early aurochs, the early cattle. And we settled in there, and all was in harmony. I was young, I was vibrant, I was full of vitality. All was great in the early lands of Eru, Banva, and Fola. Blessed.